Today, we are turning our attention to one of the most deceptively simple signals we send every single day, the smile. We're taking a scalpel to it, really, treating it not just as this spontaneous expression of happiness, though it is often that, but as a strategic, calibrated tool of influence.
It's so necessary to move past that assumption, isn't it? That a smile is just frivolous or reactive in high-stakes environments. I mean, whether you're facing a skeptical Senate committee, negotiating a major contract, or just trying to build rapport with a new colleague, the smile is a carefully chosen nonverbal signal. It operates almost like a binary switch in the brain of the person you're talking to.
That's the key distinction right there. We're not talking about teaching people to be fake or, perpetually cheerful. We're talking about signaling intent with precision, because doing it incorrectly, or worse, failing to do it at all, means your meticulously prepared words. Well, they often just land on sterile ground. That nonverbal signal really does determine the state of reception.
Exactly. Our core mission for this deep dive is to understand the hierarchy of human connection. In a world of chronic information overload, where complexity is just the default, how do you make sure your brilliant message lands not just clearly, but that it's welcomed? As we're going to see, the answer rarely lies in speaking louder or delivering more data. It lies in mastering that very first nonverbal signal you send.
And we have a phenomenal stack of sources tonight to unpack this. We're going to start with the strategic warmth of Fred Rogers' legendary appearance on Capitol Hill. Then we're going to drill down into the very anatomy of trust, exploring the 19th century scientific mapping of facial muscles by Duchenne de Boulogne.
From there, we address context. We'll look at the cross-cultural display rules that Paul Ekman uncovered and the fascinating acoustic science behind auditory warmth. For that, we'll be using a pretty extreme customer service example from Zappos.
And finally, we look at the application in conflict and regulation, everything from Warren Buffett conquering his phobia of public speaking to Herb Kelleher turning a massive corporate trademark lawsuit into a public relations victory through strategic playfulness.
It's quite a journey.
So let's start with this foundational principle, this idea of the trust filter.
The foundational principle here is drawn from some really extensive social psychology research on first impressions, primarily from researchers like Amy Cuddy and Susan Fiske. What they consistently demonstrate is that people assess two primary dimensions in these initial encounters: warmth, or trustworthiness, and competence. And the critical order is always warmth first.
It's the ancient primal assessment that's wired into our brains, isn't it? Before my brain decides, is this person smart enough to solve my problem? It's instinctively asking something much more basic. It's asking, is this person dangerous? Are they going to hurt me or steal my resources?
That is the critical evolutionary sequence. The amygdala, which is our brain's threat detection center, processes nonverbal signals far, far faster than the prefrontal cortex processes cognitive content. So a perceived threat, and that can be something as subtle as a flat, neutral face in a high-stakes environment, it triggers this defensive threat aversion response that just shuts down receptive listening. A well-placed smile is probably the single fastest way to signal non-hostility and lower that internal guard.
I think this is where so many professionals get it wrong. We are so intensely focused on signaling competence, bringing the charts, using the jargon, adopting a serious, unsmiling demeanor, that we accidentally trigger that warmth filter failure. We come across as cold, which makes us seem less trustworthy, even if our data is perfect.
You're hitting on the default professional bias.
I
Yeah,
know.
when we're under pressure, we tend to skip the warmth signal entirely. We're afraid it'll dilute our seriousness. But if you fail that warmth test, your most elegant arguments about competence, they just land on hardened, skeptical, defensive ground.
So let's look at the ultimate masterclass in executing this warmth first filter. The scene is Washington, D.C., May 1st, 1969. Public broadcasting funding, specifically the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, or CPB, is facing major cuts.
And the atmosphere, as the source material describes it, was just hostile. I mean, this is a legislative chamber focused on efficiency, on cost-cutting during a period of really intense public spending scrutiny. And the subcommittee chair, Senator John Pastor of Rhode Island, he was legendary for his gruff, demanding, results-oriented style. He was there to be brisk and skeptical, not sentimental.
Yeah, Pastore starts the interaction with a pure power play. He essentially demands compliance. He says, all right, Rogers, you've got the floor. You have 10 minutes. What do you do with this money? The expectation in that room was for graphs, lobbying talking points, legislative volume.
And Rogers, the host of the quietest show on television, just doesn't meet that energy. He walks into that hostility with a calmness that signals, well, not weakness, but profound certainty in his mission. He immediately employs a slight strategic smile, and he frames his entire testimony not around the importance of television, but around care for the audience's purpose. He tells Pastor he trusts the committee to read the complex, longer statement later. That shows respect for their time and their focus.
So his first nonverbal signal and his first verbal act are both about non-hostility. He's not fighting back. He speaks plainly, using simple human language about children and trust. He is intentionally lowering the intellectual and the emotional volume in that room.
He deliberately avoids all the dominant signals, the jargon, the loud voice, complex visuals, all the things that signal high competence but often low warmth. He's shifting the frame entirely from a legislative debate to a shared discussion about child welfare. Then he gets into the financial specifics, but again, he does it through a human lens.
Yes, the budget detail is fantastic. He explains that his program's budget is only about $6,000, a tiny fraction of the overall $20 million request. And he immediately contextualizes this in a way that congressmen understand. He says that's less than 2 minutes of cartoons.
That comparison is just genius. It implicitly contrasts the gentle, slow, intentional communication of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, a show about sitting and feeling, with what he describes as the bombardment of commercial television, the stuff that offers distraction and volume. He emphasizes that his work is about the inner drama of childhood, helping children deal with major life events like anger or getting a haircut or sibling rivalry.
The sources describe this palpable shift in the room. It didn't warm up instantly, but it became quiet, it became focused. Pastore, who was initially so aggressive, starts asking questions that signal genuine attention. He asks, how long is the program? Could we see an episode? And Rogers then drives home the core value proposition by describing the last line he tells children every day. I like you just the way you are.
That phrase, delivered in the context of a hard-nosed legislative hearing, just cuts through all the political armor. He presents this idea of helping kids name their feelings, making them mentionable and manageable as a core, inexpensive public mental health service.
The moment where the armor just completely dissolves is when Senator Pastore, who had this reputation for being completely unflappable, admits, I think this is wonderful, I've got goosebumps.
Mm-hmm.
And Rogers then follows up by asking permission to share the words of a song. He says, what do you do with the mad that you feel?
And he recites it. He doesn't perform it, he just delivers it as if he were talking to a single angry child. It's a tool for emotional regulation, not some cute musical interlude. And when he finishes, the tough, skeptical Senator Pastore, visibly moved, delivers the line that secures the mission. He says, I think it's wonderful. Looks like you just earned the $20 million.
Wow. And the lesson isn't that, nice guys finish first. The lesson is that Rogers didn't just appeal to emotion. He signaled safety so effectively, using that calibrated smile and sustained gentle tone, that he lowered Pastore's threat response. That created the psychological space for the legislative mind to actually listen to the value proposition.
So when we analyze this through the lens of social psychology, we see that warmth first filter in perfect action. If you try to lead with competence, here are my charts, here's my budget, I am smart. The skeptic is already defensively evaluating your words. They're asking, is this person manipulative? Why are they trying to dominate me?
And the disarming smile is the fastest nonverbal tool to override that defensive posture. It's a momentary softening that just signals, I recognize you, and I'm here for a connection, not a confrontation.
But you mentioned calibration, and this is so crucial. We have to dismantle this idea of the perpetual forced sales smile. Research on smile intensity shows that this is a very subtle dance.
Right. If I'm presenting serious data or delivering a critique and I smile broadly, I instantly erode my credibility, doesn't it? It looks like I'm minimizing the gravity of the subject.
Exactly. Researchers find that a broad, high-intensity smile boosts perceived warmth dramatically in low-risk social situations. However, when the stakes are high, a serious negotiation, delivering performance feedback, or a budget hearing, that same broad smile significantly reduces perceived competence and authority. It suggests a lack of seriousness.
That's the default trap we need to avoid. We either smile too much and appear incompetent, or not at all and appear cold. Rogers avoided both of those pitfalls.
He executed the high-skill strategy. He opened warm with a brief, sincere expression, and then he immediately shifted to focused neutrality. That steady, attentive demeanor while delivering the difficult content. That focused neutrality made the initial warmth believable. It showed he respected the seriousness of the content without abandoning his goodwill.
The goal, then, is the disarming smile. Short, perfectly timed, anchored to a shared positive intent, and then followed by focused attention. So for you, the listener, how do we take this high-level insight and translate it into practical tools? How do we inject that warmth without sacrificing the perceived seriousness of the moment?
We use tools designed for strategic timing. First, the door handle smile. This is the non-negotiable rule of timing. You reserve that small, genuine smile only for the threshold moments. The greeting, the first eye contact, the handshake, or the thank you. Then you immediately return to attentive neutrality when the work begins.
I find that pairing the smile with permission-first phrasing works incredibly well, especially when you're presenting something challenging. If you smile and then you ask, is it all right if I share some quick data on this? It combines that safety signal with respect for their agency.
It's a double dose of warmth and respect. And when the content is inevitably difficult or complex, you have to use serious face delivery. Let your face match the gravity of the heavy data. Save the smile for the transitions, maybe when you pause to acknowledge their perspective or effort. Something like, I appreciate you hearing this and processing it.
And to anchor that serious delivery in goodwill, the one-sentence care statement is critical. We often get caught up in trying to use fancy words, but the source material suggests simplicity is key.
It is. The goal is grounding the smile in clear, non-cheesy intent. A bad Caroline is, I hope we can be friends. A good one is Fred Rogers' implied intent, or something simple and focused like, I want this to go well for both of us. That grounds the initial warmth in a clear, shared objective before the tough task begins.
And the final piece is the soft exit smile.
Right. Ending the interaction with a small, unhurried smile and a specific closure statement ensures the lasting memory is warm, even if the discussion was highly critical or challenging. You want them to leave thinking, that was a serious conversation, but that person means well.
Let's put those micro steps into practice right now.
First, write that non-corny Caroline. Keep it actionable and true to your goals. Second, rehearse the 3-beat pattern. 1, entry smile. 2, deliver content with neutral, serious focus. And 3, soft exit smile plus closure.
That rhythm is powerful because it addresses the warmth filter, then the competence filter, and then it ends with the warmth filter again.
And the final test. Run that 3-beat pattern exactly once today in a mildly tense interaction. Observe the result. The goal isn't to be happier. The goal is to be more precise.
The maxim for this crucial first filter is this. A small, sincere smile doesn't weaken your point. It makes room for it.
Okay, so we've established that the smile has to signal warmth and that timing is essential. But what about the mechanics?
Exactly. How can one smile look utterly trustworthy while another one looks fake, pasted on, or even vaguely menacing? To answer that, we have to become forensic scientists of the face and travel back to 19th century Paris.
This section is all about understanding the anatomical difference between a voluntary, polite smile and that deep, trustworthy expression of genuine intent. This knowledge is the key to producing a calibrated, believable signal. We are talking about the remarkable work of the French physician Guillaume Duchenne de Boulogne.
Duchenne was working in the mid-1850s, and he was obsessed with a purely mechanistic question. If emotion is universal, which specific muscular contractions create which specific expressions? He was really crossing the fields of anatomy and early psychology.
And his methodology was just groundbreaking. He was using localized electrical currents applied via small electrodes to systematically stimulate specific facial muscle groups. So he wasn't asking subjects to emote, he was forcing their muscle groups to contract. This mechanical rigor meant he was dealing purely with physiological truth.
He also recognized the inherent flaw in subjective observation. He knew expressions are fleeting, they're too quick for reliable sketching. This is why he insisted on collaborating with the photographer Adrien Tournichon. They needed the objective record of the photographic plate, the glass negative, to capture the exact millisecond-long contractions.
And his choice of subject is so insightful. For his most famous studies, he chose an old, toothless man whose face, because of his age and lack of teeth, responded with unusual clarity to the electrical stimulation. Duchenne was prioritizing the pure mechanical signal over any notion of aesthetic beauty. He wanted clarity.
Through this really painstaking process, he isolated the two main muscular components of the smile. The first is the one everyone knows, the zygomaticus major.
Yes, that's the primary voluntary muscle. You can consciously pull the corners of your lips up toward your ears right now. That signals a social greeting, politeness, or perhaps even nervousness. That muscle is fully under our conscious control.
But the crucial discovery, the one that defines credibility, was the second muscle, The orbicularis oculi.
This muscle is fascinating. It's a ring-shaped muscle that encircles the eye. And when it contracts, it lifts at the cheeks, it narrows the eye slightly, and it causes those fine lines or crow's feet to appear at the outer corners. This is the anatomical signature of the genuine smile, what we now call the Duchenne smile.
What's the anatomical distinction that makes the oculi so trustworthy? Why that muscle?
Duchenne realized that while the zygomaticus major, the mouth muscle, is largely voluntary, the portion of the orbicularis oculi responsible for that genuine contraction is largely involuntary. It's difficult, if not impossible, for most people to contract that muscle group intentionally and naturally on command.
So when we see a genuine smile, we are subconsciously receiving a signal that the sender could not fake, even if they tried hard. The signal is trustworthy precisely because it bypasses the conscious will.
That's the core insight. The Duchenne smile, which recruits both the mouth and the eyes, is the accepted social signal people use unconsciously to estimate true, non-hostile intent. The mouth signals a social amenity, but the eyes provide the anatomical confirmation of goodwill.
So the goal for you, the listener, isn't to look happier, but to achieve a coordinated smile. We want our tone, our words, and our face to be sending the exact same message of warmth and connection at those threshold moments.
And the danger of relying only on the mouth, the non-Duchenne smile, is that it often reads as effort, a strained politeness, or perhaps most damagingly in a professional context, nervousness. If you're delivering a strong pitch, but your eyes are flat, the recipient's subconscious registers a mismatch. It registers a slight physiological lie.
And the professional environment encourages that mouth-only focus because we're often so focused on the delivery of the speech, not the connection with the audience. We forget to involve the part of the face that communicates true intent.
We need to shift our cue. When the goal is rapport or reassurance, we have to consciously try to recruit the eye muscles, which means targeting that largely involuntary action.
So if the key muscle, the orbicularis oculi, is hard to engage voluntarily, how can a deliberate communicator reliably produce a coordinated, trustworthy smile when they need it most? Right at the beginning of a high-stakes interaction.
We use mechanical cues that trick the face into engaging those upper muscle groups. The best tactic is the cheek lift cue. Instead of telling yourself to smile, which just engages the mouth, cue yourself to lift the cheeks up toward the eyes. This naturally engages the orbicularis oculi without forcing an unnatural conscious squint.
That makes a lot of sense. It's an indirect command that leads to the desired physiological result. What about the quality of eye contact itself? We are constantly told to maintain strong eye contact, but you suggested that might work against warmth.
Hard, intense, fixed eye contact, what some call predatory eye contact, can completely negate the warmth signal, especially if the mouth is also trying to smile. The antidote is the soft focus eye. Slightly relax your intense gaze. Allow the eyes to look engaged and receptive rather than fixed and penetrating. This relaxation makes the warmth much easier to transmit.
I love this idea of using cognitive intent to prime the smile. Warm thought, then smile.
This addresses the authenticity problem head-on. If you have to smile, but you're not genuinely happy in the moment, trying to force happiness is ineffective. Instead, briefly summon genuine intent. Recollect a liked person, a pleasant memory, or a shared positive goal for just a half second before the greeting. This fleeting positive association often sends the necessary signal to the involuntary muscles better than a mechanical demand ever could.
And the timing on the exit. We talked about speaking on the downslope of the smile.
That's crucial. A forced smile freezes in place, which instantly reads as unnatural. A genuine smile moves. Allow the warmth signal to arrive fully for 1 second, then start talking as the expression naturally settles back toward an attentive neutral.
And finally, the rule of authority, the no-sale rule.
If you try the cheek lift cue and the warmth thought, and the eye muscles simply won't cooperate, do not compensate by forcing a wider mouth or showing more teeth. The result will look strained and less credible. Instead, just drop back to an attentive, relaxed, neutral face and rely entirely on a warm tone and respectful phrasing. Credibility beats forced cheerfulness every single time.
Okay, the micro steps for our learner in this section are highly anatomical and visual.
First, the mirror test. Practice a mouth-only smile for 3 seconds. Then reset and practice the cheek lick smile. Observe which expression moves and which one looks locked. You need to know what your default polite smile looks like when you're stressed.
Second, record a simple greeting, just saying hello or good morning on your phone. Watch it back with the sound completely off. Does the nonverbal signal read as trustworthy? Or does it just read as dutiful?
And the final rep. Use the cheek lift cue once today in a low-stakes interaction where you normally default to politeness. Greeting the barista, the security guard, or a distant colleague. The goal isn't a bigger smile, it's a truer one.
The power maxim here is unassailable. If your eyes don't agree, your smile won't persuade.
So we've established the when warmth first, and the how eyes involved. Now we have to address the complex layer of context. A face is never read in a vacuum. It's always filtered through culture, expectation, and increasingly through technology.
This means we need to recognize that cultural display rules govern when a smile is appropriate. And, critically, that the voice must carry the smile when the face is hidden or obscured.
Exactly.
Paul Ekman's research in the late 1960s is the essential foundation for this discussion. He worked with the Four People in New Guinea, a community with minimal exposure to global media, to test the universality of facial expressions.
Right. His method involved matching standardized photographs of posed expressions, anger, fear, happiness to emotion stories, things like friends have come to visit or a wild pig has been killed. And he did find that the core expressions were recognizable across cultures, which suggests a strong biological foundation.
But the more powerful, and I think more practical discovery came from observing what happened after that initial universal expression flashed across the face.
He observed that people don't just make faces, they are highly skilled at managing them. He realized that the social rules dictating when, how intensely, and to whom certain emotions are appropriately shown are learned cultural mandates. These are the display rules.
So while the mechanics of the smile might be universal, the meaning and the timing are totally local.
Absolutely. If you travel to certain high-context cultures, a smile might be used to signal politeness or respect when receiving bad news, or to manage the discomfort of the person delivering the news, effectively saving face for both parties. In a Western context, that same smile might be interpreted as callousness or disagreement.
The danger for you listening is assuming a one-to-one translation, that every upturned mouth equals happiness or agreement.
Precisely. If you assume every smile equals joy, you will dramatically misread people in cross-cultural interactions. The cultural environment dictates the social utility of the smile. We have to calibrate our interpretation and avoid projecting our own display rules onto other people.
So if display rules require caution and interpretation, the next step is realizing what happens when the face is removed entirely, when we move to voice-only interactions like phone calls. This is where the Zappos case study is just phenomenal.
Referring to the Las Vegas story from 2012, Ashaya Lobis, who was a Zappos customer loyalty team member, she took a call from a customer named Lisa that lasted 9 hours and 37 minutes.
Almost 10 hours. That's not just a record, that's a policy statement. Zappos culture deliberately de-emphasizes metrics like average handle time to give representatives the freedom to be fully human and empathetic.
And in a mechanical, metrics-driven call center, the representative's tone defaults to a flat, sterile, task-focused delivery. But after hours on the line, the customer will inevitably perceive the difference between that cold, transactional tone and one that carries patience, goodwill, and warmth.
But how does warmth travel audibly when the customer can't see the smile? How does that work?
The answer is some pretty robust acoustic science. Studies show that listeners can identify smiled speech better than random chants. Acoustic analysis reveals that the act of smiling, even a subtle internal smile, changes the shape of the vocal instrument.
How so? What are the physical changes that occur?
Smiling raises both the fundamental frequency, which is pitch, and the formant frequencies, which is resonance. When the zygomaticus major and the orbicularis oculi contract, they slightly pull on the vocal muscles, and crucially, they reshape the oral cavity. This change in internal geometry creates a brighter, clearer, and slightly higher vocal tone. We interpret those acoustic markers as patience, openness, and friendliness.
That is fascinating. So even if the Zappos representative was just focused on maintaining a pleasant state of mind, the physics of their face was actually tuning their voice to sound warmer for the customer.
It's an internal choice that produces an external, measurable change. And for Zappos, this is trained behavior. They empower their reps to take emotional breaks, they prioritize feeling over efficiency, and they implicitly encourage this kind of auditory warmth. If the customer cannot see the smile, you have to make the internal choice, that quick facial reset, to tune your voice instrument from task mode to care mode.
So let's combine these lessons.
Yeah.
First, the practical steps for dealing with cultural nuance derived from Ekman.
The primary tool is baseline before meeting. In the first 2 to 3 minutes of any significant cross-cultural interaction, you have to resist the urge to immediately interpret any smile you see. Instead, just observe. How frequent is the local smiling? What triggers it? Does it appear during tension or during a greeting?
So we need to match the frequency and rhythm. If the standard is a neutral, attentive face during the discussion, you follow that rhythm.
Absolutely. And when you're unsure, use the polite smile on purpose. A small, short-duration smile with lips closed or lightly parted. This signals universal respect without claiming an intimacy or an emotional state that might be misinterpreted.
And if a smile does appear during a moment of high tension or bad news, we shouldn't assume it means comfort.
No, that's a common mistake. If a smile appears in an unexpected context, you need to gently check the meaning. Ask something like, "How's this discussion landing for you?" This opens the door for clarification without assuming the smile means compliance.
Okay, now for auditory warmth mastering, the Zappos principle.
Use the 3-second smile set. Slightly lift your mouth corners before you speak your first word on the phone. Don't force a wide grin, just enough to tune the acoustic instrument. Your voice will thank you for it.
And that technique of smiling on the person's name.
It's a small but powerful signal. Add warmth when you say the other person's name at the start and the end of the conversation. It signals focused attention and personalization, even if you're reading from a script in between.
Physical posture is also essential for voice work, isn't it?
Yes. If it's possible, stand for the first minute of the call. It improves your breath support, vocal energy, and clarity because it opens your diaphragm and chest, giving your voice richer resonance.
And finally, for difficult conversations where you might be apologizing or correcting something.
Use the soft exhale smile after an apology. A tiny post-apology smile communicates that you are calm, present, and confident in the resolution. It prevents the tone from sounding defeated or overly tense, which can be really exhausting for the listener.
We've covered a huge amount of ground here. The maxim that anchors this section is, smile in their context before you smile in yours. And if they can't see your smile, let them hear it.
Now we move to the intentional deployment of the smile when the stakes are highest, not just for the audience, but for the speaker. We're looking at how the smile functions as a psychological regulation tool and as a mechanism for cooperative conflict resolution.
This is where the smile moves from being an external communication signal to an internal physiological aid. We can start with the incredible story of Warren Buffett.
Buffett is known today as the Oracle of Omaha, right? A picture of calm, methodical authority. But in his youth, he suffered from a paralyzing fear of public speaking. He described himself as being terrified to the point where it was really impacting his ability to present his ideas.
He was a man of enormous intellectual competence, but his body was betraying him. He actually signed up for a Dale Carnegie course and then dropped out before the first class because he lost his nerve. That fear was a genuine obstacle to his professional success.
The solution, when he finally committed to it, was that same Dale Carnegie course. He treated communication skills as conditioning, not as genius. He learned the outward mechanisms, the posture, the eye contact, and the simple, confident smile that signal internal calm even when he didn't feel it yet.
He used the outside-in pathway. He learned to generate the outward signals of control and confidence, which in turn calmed his central nervous system.
That's why that certificate, dated January 13th, 1952, remains his most prized possession. It's not just a certificate, it's a monument to conquering a physical, debilitating fear. It proves that you don't wait to smile until you feel confident, you smile to become confident.
And this is supported by physiology. You mentioned the Kraft and Pressman experiment.
Yes, they conducted studies where participants performed stressful tasks, and those who were instructed to use a Duchenne-type smile during the task showed better cardiovascular recovery. What that means is their heart rate lowered faster after the stressor was removed, compared to those who held a neutral expression.
So using the smile actually helps you regulate your stress physiologically. It's not just a performative act for the audience.
It acts as a feedback loop. The smile signals warmth to the listener, lowering their guard, and it simultaneously signals non-emergency to your own nervous system, helping you maintain composure and authority under pressure. But again, for high stakes, the smile has to be small and calibrated, a gentle lift, not a toothy grin, to avoid undercutting your seriousness.
Now let's look at a case study in using strategic warmth to completely disarm a massive corporate conflict. The trademark dispute between Southwest Airlines, led by the famously affable Herb Kelleher, and Stevens Aviation.
Southwest had adopted the slogan, "Just plain smart," which Stevens Aviation felt infringed upon their pre-existing plain smart. This is a textbook case for immediate cease and desist letters, expensive litigation, and years of corporate hardening.
But the conflict was reframed entirely by the Stevens Aviation CEO, Kurt Herwald. He suggested settling the trademark dispute with an arm wrestling match. Malice in Dallas.
Most CEOs would dismiss this as just absurd. Kelleher, however, recognized the enormous strategic value. He loved the idea, tipped off the media, and promoted the event relentlessly. He turned a legal dispute into pure theater.
It wasn't just a simple handshake match either. Southwest filled the Dallas Sportatorium with 4,500 cheering employees. Kelleher fully embraced the absurdity. He entered in costume as Smoke and Herb, leaning into the joy and playfulness of the moment.
The essential lesson here is that they consciously refused to let the conflict define them. Their approach, fueled entirely by Kelleher's signature smile and humor, was a clear signal of cooperative intent. It transformed the interaction from a zero-sum legal battle into a shared spectacle, which research shows strongly predicts trust and a greater willingness to seek mutually beneficial solutions.
And the result was just spectacular. Kelleher lost the match, which only increased the goodwill and the press coverage, and Herwald, having won the match, immediately granted Southwest permission to use the slogan anyway.
It was a perfect display of soft power. Both companies gained. Southwest gained an estimated $6 million in publicity from the event, and Stevens Aviation saw its name recognition and business jump, leading to 25% annual growth for 4 years.
That goodwill was generated entirely by choosing a playful, smiling approach over a hostile, legalistic one. They took their competition seriously, but not themselves, which is exactly what the strategic smile communicates in a conflict.
So how do we operationalize this strategic smile in our own negotiations and high-stakes interactions?
We return to timing. Use the entry smile for precisely 1 second during the handshake or the first exchange of eye contact that immediately settle into attentive neutrality. You signal warmth, then you pivot to competence.
We have to strictly adhere to the intensity matching rule. The higher the stakes delivering critique, negotiating salary, sharing bad news, the smaller the smile should be. A tiny, brief lift is enough. Save the broad Duchenne smile for shared celebration.
And remember the target. Smile at people, not at sentences. Smile to connect during a greeting or a pause. Deliver the serious or complex information with a relaxed, neutral, and focused expression.
The sources also emphasize the value of the listening smile. A small, brief, eye-involved smile after the other person has finished speaking. This signals understanding, engagement, and emotional recognition without interrupting their flow or implying judgment about their content.
And if you find a deadlock, adopt the Kelleher strategy. Offer a low-stakes tiebreaker. It doesn't have to be arm wrestling, but proposing a playful, symbolic bet, maybe a small charity wager or a promise to buy coffee for the leaser, can unlock creativity and shift the personal dynamic from adversarial to cooperative.
Let's review the final micro steps for applying this in high-stakes environments.
First, script a concise warm opener, something like, "Good to see you, thanks for making the time." Deliver it with a deliberate 1-second entry smile and then transition instantly to your neutral focus.
Second, run the serious sentence test. Say the toughest line of your presentation while ensuring your mouth remains relaxed and your eyes are attentive. Note how much more credible your message sounds without that distracting forced grin.
And the final, brave rep. In your next critical meeting, intentionally restrict your smile. Smile only when you enter and when you explicitly thank someone. That's it. Allow your focused, neutral competence to carry the rest of the conversation.
The maxim for high-stakes engagement. Smile to open the door, then let your competence walk through.
What a deep dive this has been. Moving from the anatomy lab of the 1850s to the competitive theater of modern corporate conflict, the ultimate takeaway is that the smile is far from a frivolous gesture. It is a calculated tool of intent that bypasses cognitive resistance.
We've learned that the hierarchy of connection is non-negotiable. Warmth and safety must be signaled before competence can ever be assessed. And we've explored the anatomical truth that credibility lives in the Duchenne smile, confirmed by the involuntary muscles around the eye.
And we understand the essential role of context. We have to navigate cultural display rules and recognize that when the face is hidden, the voice has to be intentionally tuned via the physical mechanics of a subtle smile to carry warmth.
We saw the smile function as a powerful psychological regulation tool for both Warren Buffett and the participants in those cardiovascular studies, helping the speaker maintain composure. And we saw its strategic zenith in Herb Kelleher's choice to turn battle into play, proving that warmth and playfulness can generate enormous value in conflict.
The power of the calibrated smile is that it allows you to be highly effective and authoritative without resorting to aggressive dominance. It's the necessary bridge that allows your expertise to cross over to the listener.
The next time you walk into a crucial conversation, don't obsess only about what you say first. Focus instead on the tiny single signal that opens the door for your words.
Our provocative charge for you, the listener, is this. What kind of smile are you choosing to transmit? Rehearse your personal care line this week and commit to running that 3-beat rule smile. Deliver content, smile in your next high-stakes interaction. By mastering that split-second signal, you change the entire dynamic of the conversation. See what doors it opens for you.